The Necron Fleet. Stories continued from entries for Plans of the Silent King and White Tiger and Red Eagle playlists. I am Kari Pasha, majestic lord of the shifting stars, herald of the night unending, keeper of the sempiternal tomb, humbler of the Knib, a pharaoh of the Nephrek dynasty, the warriors of the golden stars. And I am not who I was. My immortal eyes see all, yet my cognition shatters under the lack of stimulus. My sleep was long, longer than some, longer than many. My mind wanders. This started when my love, though she still stalks the shadows of wherever I am, I lost her, forever separated by a chasm beyond reckoning, minds broken in different ways. She lives in the shadows now, coming and going I know not how or when, wherever I am in the galaxy, on my crown world, aboard one of our mighty vessels of the void. She finds me. Festooned in the skin of lesser races, she skulks and watches, yearning, as I look back from the light, yearning. Cruel hath the time been to us both. I use the words, but I cannot truly feel it. Not really. Nor can she. Not since we were killed, our lives taken from us. Echoes of emotions, echoes of memories. Only fragments of our entire consciousness transferred to these walking sarcophagi that we call bodies. Like pouring an ocean into a thimble, so much have we lost. I retain only the tiniest slither enough of my personality to know what has been done to us, to mourn what has been done to us. My mind wanders. Once I gulped at liquid to maintain my mortal sinew. Once I knew a sensation I can barely describe anymore, let alone remember. It is not time. It is our form. I cannot remember what anything tasted like, how it went down my face and into my stomach. I've had my moments when I watch mortal captives consume liquids, push burnt flesh and prepared flora into their faces, and it is simply gone. So inefficient. If they do not do it daily, they weaken. I presume such was it with me. But I have lost those memories. I can analyze a moment held by my eyes now. I can sense the universe on so many levels. But I am, sadly, just about able to remember that I cannot remember it all. The slumber has made me senescent and less stimulated, you see. I look at the screens, and I do not see the vastness of the void. I see the rolling dunes of my home world. I see my love dancing under a blazing sun, her parasol angled to perfection to protect her against its withering glare. She is happy. In a brief, wretched existence of pain and suffering, she is happy. Out of the sun, a face appears. It becomes more clear as the image of the sun and dunes dissipate. I am needed. It is time. Our little trip has identified a catch. I am transfixed in the thrill of reality again. It happens most often in battle. But I am almost alive again. And I am angry. It is time to punish. And so, it is time to clear the lesser beings from our flanks. They must be chased away from our muster. We cannot have them spoiling our surprises. War. I know this. I have done this for millions of years. Perhaps it is all I now know. But I know this. I stand imperiously out of my throne on the bridge, and in the name of the Silent King, I give the sign to attack. It begins. I break my command, my forces into the 3 wings and a center. We will run them down. We close, and their primitive weapons bark out at us. The humans. Ugly, slow, wallowing hulks with beaks for ramming? Barbaric. Despite this, I will employ the articles. I will not end it in moments by beaming cadres of assassins onto their bridges. It will be slower, but more honourable this way. Also, it protracts the event, the stimulus. And that I am most certainly all for. So we hunt them, to come in and kill them like warriors. I command the center. I surround my capital ship with escorts. My cruisers I send up either flank in a wide berth to the foe. Their weapons are crude, loud, and messy, but they can be dangerous if concentrated. So I direct my cruisers to use their drives to sweep past them, but way out of effective range of the broadsides of the Imperial fleet. They launch a veritable wall of missiles, followed by a wave of attack ships. I caress an icon of command, and our own scythes are launched. But they do not fly out to meet the enemy, nor try to create a shield of fire to stop the bank of missiles incoming. I wait and I watch, poised for the perfect moment. Then I caress another sigil, and the pulse fires off. Energy erupts from my capital ship. It passes through my fleet like an oil bath. It strikes their missiles and fighters like the fury of a star, and they are swept away. Our own fighters then leap forward into a nearly empty darkness, unchallenged now. The Imperial ships thrust and speed up. They aim to trim our lines with an oblique attack. The pitiful fool in command must think I'm afeard of the prows of the crude ramming maniacs that are the Imperial fleet. But I am not. As they close, the shoal of my escorts cannot hide us anymore. The enemy sensors report who and what they face. I can only luxuriate in the thought of the looks on their vacuous, vapid features. For I am Kari Pasha, majestic lord of the shifting stars, and it is my Cairn-class battleship that they approach. And they, the humans, they are already dead. Story continued throughout. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and threats of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. If you enjoy my little tales and presentations, then do hit us with a like and comment, or a coin via Super Thanks, and know that we do mythology and dinosaurs too. Links in the description. And today, we shall be taking an in-depth look at one of the most underrated and barely mentioned horrors that lurks in the darkness of the void of space. It is a thing of legend, a threat from the earliest of days, the most terrible of periods in galactic history, with technology that defies comprehension, and ire and spite that defy measure. The space lanes of the galaxy have come to shudder at the merest mention of these nefarious and previously unidentified threats. For long, they crept around the edges of systems, coming in to strike decisive blows rapidly, then fade away as if they had never been there, the only mark of their advent being the devastation left in their wake. For the unknown terror that has stalked the night skies is no longer so unidentified, and it would take a scholar far more adroit than myself to truly fathom if this is a blessing or a curse. For once, the Necrons were only a waking. They were considered just another regional Xenos threat, one that could have only limited resources, limited scope, thus seeming to be a very compartmentalizable, localized issue. Yet now, the Imperium has a far better grasp of the nature of their foe, their history, and their power. For the Necrons no longer cling to the shadows. They burst from them, with fire and wrath, at a callousness that gives pause to even the denizens of the Imperium of Man. In an age of eternal war, these players on the galactic stage are not to be dismissed, taken lightly, or ignored. For now, they do not merely raid and slip away. They come with armadas that blot out the sun. They hit and hold, ravaging all in their path. They are rebuilding a hegemony, an empire, that once covered the Milky Way from one end to the other. And they do not know the meaning of the words compassion, restraint, or mercy. For they come from a different age. A time of mind-bending calamity and carnage. They come from the first conflict, the war in heaven. Now, should you not be aware of this particularly important period in the Warhammer setting, then please do hit the links in the description, as there you will find the videos that will explain this period better. But for the now, let us push on with an agreement that you know what this term means, for it was the first war, and it was the most bloody by far. And if you consider that this includes the events of the Horus Heresy, the Great Crusade and the Unifications, and before them, the Cybernetic Rebellion, then this is no small thing to say at all. The war in heaven was unlike any conflict since, in scope, destruction, cruelty, and genocide. And these are the very weapons used to wage it. So hearken to me, gentle listener, for these are details of true moment. They are fundamental to understanding the dire situation humanity now faces. For the Necrons are unlike any of the races that presently exist in the galaxy, and they are fully accustomed to waging a level and type of war that none of the other races can even comprehend, often despite being involved in the war themselves. For the Eldari and the Krork, who became the Orcs, the Rashan, Knib, and Jakero, all are survivors of that abattoir. Yet they have near forgotten the lessons they learned in that war, for it ended many, many millions of years ago. And their cultures have either slid into degeneration, degeneracy, or near extinction themselves. Hence, as the line goes, much that once was known is lost, for there are none now who live to remember them. Yet now, the Necrons are returned, and nearly fully. For many years, both in the setting and out of it, the Necrons had been a faceless foe who struck and were then gone again. But now the tomb worlds of the Necrons are not just waking, many are fully operational, and Rakir has helped with that, not to mention the agents of the Silent King, and the power of old is returning to the Necrons, being built upon every day. When the Necrons were merely coming out of their slumber, they mostly followed the same post-stasis protocols for awakening their labyrinthine holdings. The maintenance constructs were activated first, if they had not been operational throughout the entire slumber. The next group to be activated would be limited numbers of warriors, and even mid-tier weapons of war, Then there would be Nemesaurs and court members of a decent rank to take over the command of the process. Then, finally, the High Court and the better elite warriors of the Tomb World would be roused. The Pharaon and his mortals and Lich Guard. And with the Pharaon there, finally, larger materials would be made available as the mobilization of the Tomb World approached its apex, exponentially increasing the available resources and combat materials until such time as the entire world had been returned to the land of the waking. Thus too it seems that the initial encounters with the Necrons were of much more humble vessels in their fleets. Hence a score or more of encounters that occurred between Imperial fleet elements and the raiding Xenos, which is what the humans believed them to be, was only with limited resources. I would think that the Necrons have been raiding the galaxy and rousing their people, and now they are beginning to have their most important, powerful, and highest scale facilities and assets be more readily available. And so, we can quite reliably project that the capital ships of the Necrons are only just about to appear in numbers. And when we consider the catalogue and known fleet vessels of the line, how they move, how adaptable and dangerous they are, the prospect of an escalation in the void is no laughing matter to any race, even the galaxy-dominating fleets of the Imperium of mankind. Of course, this can be stated to already be occurring. For if my memory is not betraying me, the Necron leadership have finally displayed a ship so vast that it was able to destroy a planet with ease. Perhaps, as some might muse, that this is merely the chariot and flagship of the Silent King himself. But my counter to this is simplicity itself. Just look at the war that these ships have fought in. The largest and most horrific to ever occur. The war that saw the end of the Old Ones. The First War. And many believe that the Blackstone fortresses, the trinkets of Vol, are relics from that brutal era. And if that was the weapon of the Eldari, or perhaps even other allies, or the Old Ones themselves, then the Necrons must surely have had far worse under their own command. Again, for one simple reason. The Necrons shattered the Catan, their star gods, with weapons of apocalyptic power. So, where are they? And the answer is, they are coming online. Right now. Void War. Now Void War, being space combat, is one of the most interesting elements of the grim-dark setting of Warhammer 40k, as it mimics the romanticized age of sail. One might think that a fleet conflict would be akin to a swift and snazzy battle at a breakneck pace, as has been blasted at our eyes by settings such as Star Wars. But nothing could be further from the truth. Of course, there will be elements such as fighters that do indeed ramp up the pace, but in general, the larger engagement is at a very different tempo. Again, as it mimics Age of Sail conflicts. They epitomize the suffocating tension of the drawn-out combat. Although the drives of ships are phenomenally powerful, the distance traversed are equally colossal. Hence there is a creeping fear that builds in this setting, as it can take hours and even days or weeks of scanning and spotting the enemy before even a shot is fired. Formations shift and change as the fleets close, trying to trick their opponents into rash decisions that give them no real advantage in the long run. Think not of a button-bashing combat game, but of a chessboard. The admirals in command will see how the larger engagement is progressing, whereas many in escorts and smaller ships will be utterly oblivious to the grand scheme. Crews will watch their imminent death come towards them at slow motion, even if it is not ships themselves, but the ordnance that they discharge. It can take minutes for the charges to strike. Long moments again before damage reports come crashing into combat screens to display what the effects have been. Sometimes enemy shots bounce off shields or even armor, Sometimes they tear chunks out of a ship. But it is rare indeed for a ship of the line to be destroyed in one volley, unless it is at practically point-blank range. Void combat is frustrating to the hot-tempered, but can be more brutal than any form of battle when it gets to knife-fighting distances. Imperial ships have prows to ram their enemies and hope to cut their vessels in twain, and if the prow is avoided, the batteries of guns firing from the front are as nothing compared to the carnage unleashed in a broadside. Like battleships of old, they unleashed their gun batteries in rolling broadsides, so as not to push their ships off course by the sheer kinetic discharge that sends their weapons into the void. And void combat is akin to submarine combat, in that rent hulls and fire are often more dangerous than the initial impact. For if your ship runs out of air, well... Between exchanged volleys, repair crews rush up and down stairs, charge across hangars and down cramped thoroughfares to get to the most imminent threats, in the hope to patch the vessel they call home. Void combat is terrifying for its boarding actions also, for near all races have some form of delivery system to get their most elite troops into the enemy ships, cutting and hewing and causing pandemonium. This confusion is often more deadly than the scalps they take in the red mist of sword and bolter in close confined quarters, for the repair crews cannot move freely. The gunners can be taken unawares and slaughtered, or the engines sabotaged to great effect, and, of course, the utter horror of a capital ship being taken by an enemy can lead to a thrice-fold woe: the loss of the asset, the intelligence that they have on board falling into the wrong hands, and finally, the worst of all, the ability for the enemy to use the captured ship as bait, decoy, or even vanguard to a surprise attack on facilities distant enough to be unaware of the status of the ship as lost. So I hope you can now comprehend the horror of void combat. That said, let us push on. The technology of the Necron fleet. At this juncture, I think it behooves us to gain an accord on what the Necron ships can actually do. For can there truly be anything more interesting and important as how they work? Let us begin with one of the most fundamental facets of void conflict, the method of propulsion and travel. In one word, engines. Or to the layperson, how do they fly? The Necrons are not called the Soulless by so many races for no reason. They do not have any connection to the immaterium, the warp, in any way. Thus, they cannot generate any form of navigator mutation to a system in traversing that realm, as so many other races do to achieve far faster than light travel. Because if it's not in magnitudes above that speed, the universe is simply too big for anything to be done. Now there are some who are exceptions. The Elder, who are known to traverse a halfway house dimension between reality and the hellscape that is the warp, and they call it the Webway. The Tau can skim the surface of the warp to achieve travel, but it is certainly slower than warp translations. A one-sentence description is that most races have engines that tear a hole in real space, permitting the ship to enter the warp, where it is a shadow of reality, but travel there is astonishingly fast. And then, when you are at your destination, you tear another hole and return to real space. Most races use a Geller field, or some form of, that keeps out the forces of the warp, like shields against the tides of the evil warp. But the Necrons do not do this. They have astoundingly advanced technology. They are the masters of the corporeal world. They have what are called inertialess drives. They can use them both strategically and tactically. They can use these drives to boost their ships forward, propelling them like missiles, building momentum and speed as they go using these jumps, but they can also use them with restraint and nuance, permitting them to seemingly appear and disappear from engagement range using these bursts of speed. They can outstrip nearly any fleet for pure speed in real space, and would trail much behind a warp-translating fleet of foes due to their second system of moving their fleets. Gates. The Necrons once worked with the Catan, and they were their warrior thrall hordes, but they learned much from their masters, and one of the most important things they learned was the construction of dolmen gates. With these technological terrors, they can tear a portal into the major spars of the webway, and through it, they can not only move with lightning speeds across the galaxy, as it was used against them so long ago during the early epochs of the First War, but they can also assail any Eldari strongpoint or vessels therein. Though this can sometimes be a risk, as the webway is antithetical to the Necrons, and will break down, collapse, and then regenerate when they have left. But if the Lord of the Necron fleet is exact, aware of the signs directed, then they can use the webway to go near anywhere in the galaxy. They can also just phase out of existence, using extended range teleportation devices, so nowhere is safe from them, and few who are assailed will ever see the Necron fleet coming, until it is way too late. Now we know how they get about, it is time to ask the next most important question. What are they made of? How tough are these ships? In the advanced science of the Necrons, shields are an utter waste of time. Why bother with such an energy-hungry defensive system when they have something far better? Living metal. Now most Necron tech, armor, vehicles, and combat vessels are made of this incredible material. It is one of the toughest metals known to the galaxy. But even should you somehow manage to inflict such force on it as to damage this substance, the instant the kinetic impact or energy stream finishes, the ship begins to repair itself. And I do not mean some quaint and wacky scene where some amusing droids come rumbling along the hull and weld on a plate. No. The metal is living, and it regenerates faster than a short Canadian mutant with a metal skeleton. In this way, the Necron fleet can sustain colossal punishment if they merely rotate their facing or even ships, permitting the living metal of their ships time to heal. In a protracted engagement, the odds of victory against the Necrons dwindle with every passing minute, and this means that there are only two ways to deal with the Necron fleet. The first, to hit them as hard as you can as fast as you can, and pray to the Emperor or Kayla Menchikane or Gorka Mork that their line shatters under the pressure. The second is to run and hide. But it had better be to the warp, for anywhere else and you are Grok's fodder. But to help illustrate the situation, let us return to my little tale. I am Lord of the Sons of Jugoris, here at this great muster. I am Osmokai. I am the White Scar. Stranger has never happened in all my life, for now we, the Angels of Death, the White Scars, go out to sweep the stars, to hunt for trouble, to look for enemies, whereas the Navy fights the enemy fleet. Never before has this happened. But never before have I been among such a gathering of my cousins. We Astartes were to be the hawk that flies high, to protect against transgressions, to strike like lightning and thunder. For many fell foes are abroad, and all plains and lanes lead into this one place, this abundance Tertius. The Ultramarines, Templars, Fists, Salamanders, and more, all hold near the Mandeville Point. Thus, it is I who volunteered to perform our traditional role. I would take out strike flotillas to scout the outer systems, and to see what darkness gathered there. Between the stars, between the systems, more than one fleet accumulates, More than one avalanche of armadas head towards this space. The tainted traitorous scum also are lurking. So much have I seen with mine own eyes. Returning, we stopped here in this system to take stock and rest our navigator. And there they were. Our Geller fields needed to power down to recharge. As soon as that had happened, they appeared. Still a way out, but covering space fast. Throwing out data gin and interference that caused our sensors issues, I had left the battle barge with the fleet, of course. Transferred my flag and ridden out atop the strike cruiser, baleful charge. Accompanied by 5 escorts, we were a force to be reckoned with, to do work. But we did not know what we faced. It could not be orcs or early tendrils of the bugs arriving, for neither could effectively scramble our Auspex sensors, their scans. It had to be something far more dangerous, but there were many potential candidates. As I said, traitors, renegades, the degenerate Eldar, or perhaps just stupid but well-armed raiders. But then, they got closer, and their attempts to obfuscate peeled away. It was the soulless, the Necrons. The Black Templars have experience with these Xenos, but we White Scars do not. I do not. I opened entries on my heads up. I scanned as fast as I could, even as an Astartes. Bad. So few encounters, so few reported on is more precise, because so few had survived said encounters. But we could see their plan. It was solid. Bull's horns. Simple, but solid. I grinned to my brothers on the bridge as I then give the order. The enemy must think we are just Imperial Navy. We are not. We are the sons of the Khan. And, as is rightly said, we do strange things to our ships. We launch a barrage of missiles towards them, fighters from our escorts in a dispersed pattern behind that. Let us see what the Xenos can do. They launch fighters also. Then their first surprise play is revealed. A ripple of energy bursts from their lead ship, behind, so we cannot identify it still. Until they do that. They fire what the Ordo Xenos have designated a star pulse generator. The dragon behind the swarm is a Cairn-class battleship. I note the ships at our flanks. They burst around us faster than I had thought they would, by some degree. I grin. This is how war should be. Fast. A highly subjective quality in void warfare. It is certainly no charge or melee. But this will do. I order our predictable oblique attack, powering toward them to frighten them, then sweep aside and pick off their stragglers with heavy broadsides. This is what they will predict, and exactly what we will do, of course. But we are not the Navy. At that, they prepare to close the trap. Their fighters tearing towards us, their flanking ships turning in a fast hook to our rear. I then order full speed ahead. Then we put on a burst of speed that surprises them. We weather their fire, not all come through. I will enter the names of their crew in the annals. Our spear formation cuts to the left of the central block. We evade the cairn and take the edges of the pack. There is a gleeful clamour of battle outside the bridge as their forces appear aboard our very ship. Stripped of our shields as we are, the peripheral fire from the cairn and its lead escorts brought them down, and many shots passed straight through them. To be expected. They are a new threat. They will have their tricks, just as we. My lieutenant signals the battle aboard goes exceptionally well, so we thumb our noses at them and power away, leaving their net broken and their formation cluttered. but I am keeping my eye on the engines. The Adepts will signal the moment the Geller fields have recharged. This may be tight. They turn quickly, reform like it was a dressage. They are warriors. I play running horse. We run fast. Then, more contacts. More have arrived. But we do not know who. This is either very good, or very bad, or very both. Story continued later in this video. Now I feel it is important for us to discuss the weapon systems of the immortal threat, the Necrons. And for brevity, and so I can spend more time on my narratives and breakdowns. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. Taken from Battlefleet Gothic. To quote: Necron weaponry. The Death Ray. The Death Ray is a heavy Necron weapon, most commonly mounted on Doom-sized fighter aircraft. Emitted from a focusing crystal, the Death Ray takes the form of a white blinding light that vaporizes infantry and tanks alike. A single Doom scythe equipped with a Death Ray can carve its way through an entire armored column, and a full squadron can reduce a sprawling hive city to rubble in less than an hour. The Lightning Arc. As one of the primary weapons used by Necron warships, stored solar energy is released as a wave of living energy tendrils, which envelop targets, probing for any points of weakness. The Particle Whip. The Particle Whip uses a tightly focused particle beam to carry an immensely powerful bolt of energy towards a target. This discharge heavily damages all targets within the blast radius. The only ground vehicle to carry a particle whip is a Necron monolith, as the immense energy demands of the whip require the entire supply of the monolith's power matrix to fire. In space, however, particle whips are common armament on Necron warships. The Star Pulse Generator. It generates a powerful force of energy in a radius around the Necron craft. While it proves damaging to enemy vessels, it does not harm any Necron ships. The Energy Drain. Only utilized by Cairn-class tomb ships, it drains the target vessel of all of its energy and power, rendering it helpless in space. The Sepulchre. The Sepulchre is a weapon used by the Necrons that is normally outfitted on the largest of their vessels. When activated, it generates a wave of palpable psychic force towards any enemy starship. The crew of the afflicted vessel begin to suffer from visions of horror that leads them to rampaging out of control. If allowed to continue, the crew can damage their own ship unless its captain manages to restore discipline and order. Tomb ships can be upgraded to include a Sepulchre. The Nightmare Field. Only utilized by ships already equipped with the Sepulchre, a wave of palpable psychic forces generated from the Necron ship, and all nearby enemies are affected. Victims become paralyzed by visions of horror, which often results in the frenzied crew destroying their own ship from within. End quote. Now I do feel that some of these ancient pieces of lore could do with a refresh. Why? Because weapons such as the Sepulchre and the Nightmare Field were developed when the Necrons were but shadowy raiders, mysterious and terrifying. But now, as they are more fleshed out, it seems strange that they can harness psychic weapons at all, so the Sepulchre and the Nightmare Field seem oddly out of place in their arrays. Unless these use a negative charged element of Noctilith, Blackstone, but even so. I find these weapons challenging to fit into the modern refreshed Necron lore, but even so, the remainder of their weaponry shows a level of skill, precision and technology that is more reminiscent of other brighter settings. The Necrons can beam their weapons onto enemy vessels, drain the energy from a foe to leave them defenseless. Surely, they are far more advanced than anything deployed by the Imperium, but even the Eldar too. I still believe that even the Cairn class is not the upper extent of the vessels we shall, or at the very least should, see, as the Necron war machine is no longer just a waking, no longer just securing old provinces and capital worlds, for the Necrons are now marching across world after world, sector after sector, carried there most often by the Necron fleet. And I honestly believe that we will see far more important, robust, expansive, and lethal fleet assets revealed as the Necron war machine goes into full swing. Now to the ships that are known. Let us start off small and head towards the Whoppers at journey's end. Attack craft. Boasting some of the swiftest and most nimble fighter craft in the galaxy, their speed belies the usual perception of the Necrons in land-based combat, for they are seen as a slow and grinding force that inexorably marches on. But they're smaller craft. They are so agile and accelerate so quickly that they can give issues even to Eldari pilots, if they do not surpass them entirely. And anything as fast as an Eldar is practically impossible for normal mortal men and women to even see. They are the Doom Scythe, the Night Scythe, and the Night Shroud. I have covered them in a previous entry, and links will be in the description. Escorts. These are ships that make up the bulk of any fleet, be it Necron or otherwise. They create pickets, keep enemy ships back, or can be used to form echelon formations, protecting the most important ships of the line from fighters, drones, missiles, or other light vessels. Escorts are used for patrol flotillas and to support major fleet elements. The Dirge-class Raider. The Dirge is the smallest vessel in the Necron fleet, and the smaller of the two known escorts. It appears to be somewhat rarer, although this may be due to the relative scarcity of encounters with Necron fleets thus far. For armament, the Dirge-class Raider is equipped with lightning arc batteries. The Jackal-class Raider. Jackals are the equivalent of Imperial escorts, and only on 2 occasions have these ships been seen working on their own. Instead, they are usually found tailing the Cairn-class Tomb ships and Scythe-class Harvest ships. It is the larger of the 2 escorts. For armament, Jackals also wield lightning arc batteries. And now we come to the 2 ships of the line, the ones that do the real damage, absorb the real fire from the enemy. Light cruisers. Sekhmet class. The Sekhmet is a light cruiser class of Necron warship. It is equipped with the Star Pulse Wave, which is capable of unleashing devastating damage to nearby enemy vessels, as well as munitions. Cartouche class. Bearing strong resemblance to the Shroud class, the primary difference between the 2 ships is that the Cartouche is equipped with both particle whip and lightning arc arrays, while the Shroud is equipped with solely the latter. The Khopesh class. These are very fast-moving vehicles, like much of the lighter Necron fleet. Acting as a reserve force, fighting with the Scythe-class Harvester ships, they are more heavily armed than the Shroud class, and very effective when used in conjunction with the Shroud, taking more damage before allowing the Shrouds to get in closer. Khopesh-class vessels wield lightning arc and particle whip batteries. The Shroud class. The Shroud-class cruiser is equipped with a heavy complement of lightning arc turrets. They were first recorded in year 992 Millennium 41 during a battle with Battlefleet Pacificus. In the following 6 years, 3 more incidents ended with the Shroud-class light cruisers retreating from battle. In year 998 Millennium 41, 5 Shroud-class light cruisers assaulted the Adeptus Mechanicus facility on Mars. Several managed to land on the soils of Mars itself, and although they were destroyed in the end, their hulks were never found. Since the Mars incident, 6 additional encounters have seen the Shroud acting as the forward eyes and ears of the Necron fleet. They excel in this role because no ship that is capable of catching them has the firepower to engage them. The fact that 5 of these light ships easily infiltrated the Mechanicus' home world reinforces the danger the Necrons pose to the Imperium. True cruisers. Scythe-class harvester ships. They appear to be more common than the larger Cairn-class tomb ships, and have so far been part of every encounter with Imperial vessels. There are only 2 classes of harvester ship, the Reaper and the Harvester, with the primary difference being the addition of a sepulchral weapon system on the former. The standard armor of both vessels include lightning arc and particle whip arrays. The ships appear lightly built compared to Imperial vessels, but this is misleading, as they are particularly difficult to destroy. There are only 3 known instances of the disabling of a harvest ship, and in each case, the firepower of several capital ships was required. They are, with their armament, the equal to all but the largest of Imperial vessels. The Cairn-class tomb ship. To anyone else, a battleship. The Cairn class is the largest vessel seen in Necron fleets so far, often used as flagships for armadas. It was on a Cairn-class tomb ship that Imhotep the Stormlord was finally brought to bay and boarded by the Black Templars. These class of ship dwarf even Imperial mainline elements or capital ships. At 15 kilometers wide, they are the largest vessel in the Necron fleet. They are the most powerful and heavily armed of Necron ships, and are easily strong enough to destroy an Imperial battleship. Though they are powerful, they are also rare, and have only been encountered 7 times. They are heavily equipped with an array of devastating weaponry, such as the sepulchra, lightning arcs, energy drain generators, and particle whips. They are always part of a fleet, and have never been seen without 3 escorts of Scythe-class harvester ships at a minimum. They are all of the same design, indicating a well-planned and tested ship, brought to the fruition of its design. Though there are no known variants to the Imperials, there is a rumor that a Necron ship that dwarfed an Orc space hulk may have engaged an Orc fleet, although this may be typical Orcish exaggeration. And so, we see that the Necron fleet is a thing of true horror, and it is nothing at all like it was in the heady days of Battlefleet Gothic. For then, the Necrons were mere raiders, protecting their limited assets from damage at the cost of defeat. Now, with the Silent King and Anrakir waking near the entire galaxy, with Imhotep the Stormlord pushing out in all directions, and the old dynasties now following suit, the Imperium, the Orcs, the Eldar, the Tau, all should fear the advent of these fleets of cold killers. For they are not passionate, not able to be goaded into mistakes. The Necron commanders, be they admirals or nemesaurs, lords or pharaons, are logical, experienced, and battle-hardened. They know the ways of war of near all who can threaten them, and it will not take them long to correlate, catalogue, and then be able to run rings around the Imperial Navy or so. And as such, the only thing that the Necrons now lack is, ironically enough, time. Can they either bring the younger races to heel, crush them, or even ally with them, fast enough to form a cohesive defense against the great devourer, the Tyranids? Can the Silent King create a force and structure that can face off against the Tyranids? As I am oft to say, only time will tell. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Now before you click off, there is a final story element to close out the video, so stick with me. Now subscribe and like and all that stuff if you enjoyed the video, and join me every Friday as I take dives into the Warhammer universe. Or check out our other channels on natural history and mythology, links in the description. Patreon, merch, notification button, you know the boogaloo. Now if you do enjoy Necrons, and want more hobby or tactical content, then please hit up the channel of my good friend and mentor, Nick, of Idic Beer, and his links will also be in the description. And so, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo. Unexpected. These are true sailors of the void. These human ships are disciplined and hardy. Their crew are genetically enhanced. I underestimated them, but it shall only be the once. I record their heraldry. This will make an interesting tidbit to hold close. These white ships are thunder and lightning. For the lesser races, they fight well. I will enjoy this. Klaxons scream across the bridge. Contacts. Fast. Very. Oh, I know these silhouettes. Can it be? Why do they close with us? Oh, this is fine jest indeed. I have slept for long, but to me, it was only 100 years ago, a blink of an eye, since I was trading fire with true Eldar fleets. These are callow-weak popinjays compared to their might of old. I know. I had the pleasure of ending one of their hives amidst the stars. They are now weaker than I could have feared, but they are still of that race. We must destroy them. We will clash. Oh, I can almost feel it. The heat of battle. Now, I only feel the rage. The cold rage. I will end these gnats. I am far amidst the darkness. I am the light of old. I am of Eldenesh. I am of Kayla Menshik Kane. And I claim that which is mine own. Again, fate brings us to the same field, yet this time there is common enemy. Ah, White Tiger, you are wounded, fast for your kind, but panting, bleeding, and the ghouls will surely get you. Nay, you are mine to kill, my closest enemy. No Ogier will claim mine own, the old enemy. And thus, they are now the enemy of mine enemy. So, soulless ones, let us do the dance of beams and blasts. I know I must be clever. We must be as swift as Falshu, for the soulless are near as nimble as we, and their ships do not die easily. So we duck into range and concentrate fire. 2 Necron escorts are torn to shreds on the first pass, and a pair lose their front halves on the second. But they will come back. Even I know this. But what happens next is a wake-up call, of the worst kind possible. The Eldari fool dips into range too close the third time, and I order a full report. Our ships of the line fire into the Eldar, and most of it ignores their pretty little fields. They break off in shock. 2 of them limping, 1 a carcass. The chevrons move like birds on my screen, and I have just thrown in a large rock at them. So they scatter. I order my scythes, my fighters, to cease harassing the human flotilla, and they swing around to engage the Eldar craft. The other previously flanking force I order to jump ahead of the humans. All they need do is slow them down. I wheel my formation towards the Eldari and prepare to give them a demonstration in ship combat. They will run. or they will die. And for me, I hope they do not run. To be continued.